back to episode 4. In this video, I'm going to just be doing VOD review on Azalea Iyslander. I covered some of the matchup specifics in the previous video, so kind of the overview of the matchup is going to be there. This recording of games I have with Oliver is about 2 hours long, so with pausing and such, this video is going to be long enough as is. If you would like to see the other side of the video, Oliver's uploaded his side with audio as well on his channel over at OKNY. I'll link it in the description, but then you'll be able to see the Iyslander perspective of this matchup. So in this matchup, both players are looking to go first. I believe in this... Actually, I guess we'll just jump into it and see who wins the die roll. We end up playing, I believe, 6 games during this time, so I'm just going to go through them one after the other. He wins the die roll and gets to go first. With this opening hand, we should be looking to block out and hold probably a headshot, or maybe a blue, depending on how the turn presents itself. Obviously, we're not opposed to throwing everything in front just to preserve our health total, but if we have the option of holding a card, either the red headshot or the blue headshot would be the best options to hold back. Plays a red Aether Ice Vein, not fusing. So at this point, we should be able to assume that there's going to be an additional 2 Arcane following. I believe I messed this up. I should have blocked with pitching the blue, or rather pitch the drill shot and the blue headshot, leaving 2 resources floating. And by doing that, it would let me cover up the Waning Moon if he decided to or not, and I'd be able to hold the headshot. In this case, I ended up pitching the 2 reds trying to hold the blue. For some reason, I didn't expect him to throw the Waning Moon, or maybe I didn't plan on it properly. But there also is a universe where he chooses not to fire the Waning Moon, knowing that I have AB2, as that would give me an additional option for filtering my hand. So it was kind of a toss-up as to which one he would do. Either way, we end up healing back the 3 Arcane we took off the Ice Vein, and get to go into our first turn without taking any damage. This hand's not great. Don't have any buffs. So we're just going to look to fire off an arrow and end with this Bolt and Shot Arsenal. Draw into another arrow, so it's just a pretty simple Fatigue Shot for 5. I choose Fatigue Shot over Remorseless, as the text on it ends up being a little more relevant, and this demands 2 cards more often if you wanted to throw back like a Wounded Bull. He comes back with a Fighting Spirit for 7, healing 2, 1 off the Heart of Fyendal, 1 off the Fighting Spirit. Again, our hand is a bit underwhelming, so we're just going to preserve the health total there while we look for something better to do. Whenever we activate Cross-Wrap, we reveal as cost, and then the opponent has a window to respond. Make sure that you're giving your opponent proper windows, as if you go Cross-Wrap, flip, and immediately look to the top of your deck, and they go, wait a minute, I wanted to respond, you can get in some trouble at events, because they could call a judge because you looked at a card you weren't supposed to look at yet. And at the very least, it's frustrating on both players when you aren't giving them the time that they're supposed to have. So he chooses not to respond and lets me opt. We see a buff on top. So I play the Seek and Destroy, in which case, if he has the opportunity to give me a Frostbite, he probably should here, as it would demand an additional card from my hand. But at the very least, as soon as the Seek and Destroy comes down, he's going to have to deal with this attack for 7 outside of I don't know. I'm trying to think what it would be. He had the Aether Ice Vein, which he ends up getting punished a little bit by waiting. But I'm able to Arcane Barrier 1 as it's the last card in my hand. So at that point, I don't take any, or I don't have to discard to the effect. So we do deal 4 damage. So he's just going to play out an Insidious Chill. But this leaves us an opportunity where he doesn't have an arsenal. And that's, yeah, really important. So we've got 2 different options here. We could look for just a typical turn-efficient line where we're pitching Death Dealer load. The alternative would be to use Take Aim and try and find something to dominate. But I don't think that we really need to. When Iyslander doesn't have an arsenal, even threatening something like 8 makes it so they're either leaking damage or not getting an arsenal or not getting a good turn. Luckily, we draw the Enlightened Strike, so this gives us an opportunity to extend more cards out of our hand. It's not the most efficient, 2 cards for 5, but it's better than not using some number of cards in our hand at the end of the turn. We do also have the Tunic up, so we can live through a blizzard. We're not happy, but we can play through a blizzard here. Now, I do decide to extend the remainder of the hand. I saw him block with a Wounded Bull, which gave me... Let me pause that there. When he blocks with a Wounded Bull, that tells me that... Or rather, only blocks with a Wounded Bull and takes 3. That tells me he's planning a big crackback. So it's either going to be another Wounded Bull or an Aether Ice Vein. So I went ahead and took a gamble and said, if it's a Wounded Bull, he's going to be very unhappy with me firing for 8 because he doesn't want to block with it, and he can't attack back with it because he can't block it effectively. Not sure if that was correct. Looking back, it probably wasn't, but that's what I did. Another thing is, in other matchups, I talk about trying to maintain an arsenal. Into Iyslander, you do run the risk of trying to do that, where if you're arsenaling cards like buffs, in other matchups it's great. Into Iyslander, all of a sudden you can get caught in a position where you go to flip it over for cross rep, and they play a Channel Lake Frigid. And all of a sudden you have to spend 2 resources to get it out to clear the Frostbite. Then another 2 resources to load with your bow. Then another 2 resources to fire an arrow. So you can end up getting taxed out by something like that very easily if you are always keeping that in arsenal. I think typically you should lean towards still having an arsenal, but if you have the opportunity where you think you can extend it, it's not always the worst to overextend your hand, or it's less bad than in other matchups. I suppose the other argument when he decided to take the damage on that previous turn was the fact that he leaked damage on the Enlightened Strike, which indicates to me that he's planning on holding back cards, and I just wanted to push as much damage as I could while he was looking to not block. Alright, so here we just have a blue Aether Ice Vein revealing a Channel Lake Frigid, which unfortunately means that I gotta figure out what I'm doing with that. There is an interesting conversation here where you could go, hey, I'm gonna just throw away 3 of these cards, only take 1 damage, and then hey, I've only got 1 card left, so his channel doesn't do much. But you do really need to hold some number of cards to make sure he needs to play the Channel Lake Frigid. If I only hold 1 card, then he'll just block, and then I'll have to deal with the Channel Lake Frigid on a later turn. So we're going to see me, I believe, pay and discard using the Brain Razors and the Take Aim, and still try and push back something on the next turn. It might not be much, but I'm going to hold 2 cards, and when I pitch to activate Death Dealer, that will be making it look like I've got maybe more than I have. But it'll make it look like there's a turn coming that Channel Lake Frigid will disrupt, even though it really isn't much of a turn. So yeah, we see I pay to the Insidious Chill, taking 3 from the Ice Vein and discarding a Take Aim. So I pitched a Death Dealer, at which point I expect him to channel Lake Frigid. Yep. Now I do decide to use my Tunic here. This is going to make sure that I can fire the Bolton shot afterwards, even if it's just for 3. It will... My Tunic will likely be back at 2 counters by the time Channel Lake Frigid is gone. So I'm really not losing too much by doing that here, and I'm just making sure I can fire this off. I draw an E-Strike, which is probably one of the best Arsenal targets while under Channel Lake Frigid, if not the best. So I'm very happy to see that. The next option is like a 1 for 5 arrow is probably the next best thing. Yep, he goes ahead and Waning Moons me. Obviously I'm not pitching my E-Strike, so... Right, he plays Coronet Peak. I see another E-Strike, which is great, so I can just pitch this headshot, because I can't afford to load and fire it very effectively. So we'll just pitch the headshot. Then obviously whenever you're playing E-Strike under a Channel Lake Frigid, you want to pitch your highest pitch card and bottom a lower pitch card. So I want the E-Strike in Arsenal, so I'm going to pitch the blue and bottom the yellow. And this just represents 7, which means he needs to take some damage if he wants to maintain this channel to 2. And if I'm leaking damage, I'm happy. And if he's not channeling 2, I'm happy. So it's kind of just a win-win there. Do see a Wounded Bull. I know Channel Lake Frigid is going away, and my hand does not block. There is a discussion to block with the Remorseless. Look to do something like Remorseless or block with the Remorseless, go Rabble E-Strike. However, that would be disrupted by a single Frostbite. So then the question becomes, is it worth holding that Remorseless as the card that plays through a Frostbite? And I come to the conclusion that it's not. I have a pretty decent health lead here that's going to disappear off that Wounded Bull. And I wasn't ready to give up my entire health lead to try and play through a Frostbite. Quickly remind him that the Channel Lake Frigid's gone, and we see a Cold Snap. So obviously I don't have spare pitch, so I'm not worried here. I'm just going to let it get frozen. And one nice thing about the way that we sideboard into Iyslander is that outside of Knock the Death Whistle, there really isn't any like turn-ending misses off of Blind Azalea. I missed what I upped there. Okay, it was the Glide Path, and I should leave that on top. Yep, I wanted to make sure I had a red for this Rabble. We're going to pitch to play the Rabble. Then I'm just going to look to play a second Rabble afterwards. It's just going to be a nice 8 damage. He uses Waning Moon. There's no real reason for me to pitch to block it. I'd be blocking 1 or attacking with it for 4, so it's kind of a no-brainer. Just take it. Now there is an voice crack. There is an interesting decision point here after that Rabble resolved that I may have wanted to put the Glide Path into my arsenal using the Azalea ability, as Enlightened Strike from Arsenal can sometimes be a little bit awkward. It's not your favorite card when you have to play it as an extender, but it can work. So we do get another Cold Snap. I'm seeing a blue and triple read the Glide Path. So I'm leaning towards taking my chances of finding an arrow on top. At the very least, I know that I can find something. Although the alternative is I do still have a headshot. No, I can't afford to pay for that. Never mind. Ignore me. Now, this is always awkward when you're looking for an arrow and you find like a yellow or a blue Bolton shot. trying to decide if you take it or look for something better, because you do run the risk of missing if you keep digging. However, this actually does line up reasonably well. He's already given me the frostbite for the turn, so I know that doing it this way, I'll be able to bottom that, load in the bolt and shot, and then I'd be able to Death Dealer fire the headshot afterwards. Just due to the potential risk of like a blizzard, I want to make sure that I play all of the buffs that I can prior to firing this first bolt and shot, as if I got blizzarded and I had a Read the Glide Path left in hand that I was saving for a later attack, it would get stranded there and I'd never get the value. So this just comes in for a nice clean 9. I haven't used Death Dealer, so I don't care if he blocks it or not. So he's going to go ahead and take 5. Obviously choosing not to reload. I'm going to activate Death Dealer here, and he responds with Waning Moon, which gives me a weird decision point where it's like, it's a blue headshot. I half wanted to just block Arcane, but I quickly realized that that's just not correct ever. It's still going to be a lot of damage. Now he does only have 3 cards in hand, which means I'm going to choose to overextend this Seek and Destroy just to represent a 7. He doesn't have a floating resource for like Ironhide Gauntlet right now. And we already saw him throw like Brothers in Arms. This is a very awkward block for him if he wants to maintain an arsenal. Actually, I don't think there's any great way for him to maintain an arsenal here. Oh. No, we get the peak. Sweet. Which means that our Seek and Destroy did its job. Now, there should be a reasonable baseline read here that's a very high priority arsenal target there. Something like a channel like Frigid, maybe like I think he would have held an Aether Ice Vein and taken the damage. I don't know. I think a channel like Frigid seems like a reasonable read. Oh, Polar Blast. Maybe I just assume worst case scenario. But this is fine. We had the blue, so we're able to play through his attacks just fine. I draw the yellow, which is actually interesting because I could use it either for 2 damage or to block 2 Arcane. And looking back at, no, the value of the opt is ever so slightly better, and I would like to, I think I want to trade damage when I'm this far ahead. You'll notice there that I activated Azalea and I just like immediately play it. It's kind of me just representing and reminding that he doesn't have a priority window. As soon as this Azalea resolves, I have priority back, so I get to take that action. And this is a great like hand for representing this, where I'm okay if he blocks this, because then I just play the Sigil and Arsenal Pass. If he doesn't block it, I get to reload the Red in the Ledger and fire that. Or actually, even better here, I get to Azalea, or Crosswrap rather. And I get to see, I know that there's an arrow on top. Interesting that I choose to send it to the bottom. I think it would be a fair decision point to leave it on top. But either way. Go ahead and Arsenal the Sigil. Just comes back with a Wounded Bull. Now this hand is interesting. So I had options of like pitching Bolt and Shot to load the headshot and then release attention, use this Rain Razors for 2 damage. However, if I use the Rain Razors as my pitch on this turn cycle, instead of getting 2 damage out of it, I get 3 block out of this, and obviously that's just a more efficient trade, and that's what I'm looking for here. So this hand is disrupted by 1 Frostbite, as we often will be. I'll probably lose an extra card to it, but it is what it is. We see a red, which... Okay. Huh. Interesting. The way that I played this makes me think that I had a good read that he didn't have an ice card in Arsenal. However, I'm not entirely sure that that read is fair. There is another thing to note here. There was an argument to play the release the tension first. And the reason for playing the release the tension first would be to deny him a priority window after resolving Death Dealer. The only concern with playing release the tension first could be... What is the punish? I was going to say if it was a Blue Ice Vein, but I'm already getting punished by a Blue Ice Vein because he's got the chills. There might not actually be that bad of a punish. I think I should have, after he let me resolve this sigil, I should have played release the tension first. And what that's going to look like here is once I flip this sigil, if he has a Cold Snap in Arsenal, he's not going to use Cold Snap now because I'll immediately play the sigil and I never even have to think about whether or not I pay for it. So if this was something like a buff in Arsenal, I could probably get a read that he doesn't have the Cold Snap. Since it's a sigil, I don't get that read here, so it could still be a Cold Snap. So I would get punished pretty hard on this line if he had the Cold Snap here. Luckily he doesn't, and I get to just play the release the tension headshot uninterrupted. But I think that was a bit of a misplay there. And again, because he still has an Arsenal, I obviously can't play the take aim as well to extend my hand because I would just lose 12 damage if he had one Frostbite. So I can't put it past my opponent saving that Frostbite all the way until the end. That it's too possible of a situation. So at this stage of the game, the goal is kind of to try to hopefully keep him from ever getting to Ice Fan to me again. Doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do that here. He was able to hold 3 cards. And most likely it's just going to be an Ice Vein. Okay, it was the Ice Vein in Arsenal. It reveals the channel. So unfortunately, when he's arsenaling a channel and he's got all these Ice Veins, there's not much I can really do. The goal is kind of just damage control. So it is a take aim in Arsenal. I'm expecting a channel like Frigid, which means... Well, I have to pay 6, I guess is the takeaway here. There's a couple of options. I could take the 4 damage and just pitch the 2 blues to pay for all of the discard trigger effects, which would then put me as my next turn would probably just be a blind Azalea. That could work. I think I might actually be partial to that line. However, I do decide to discard pay and then AB1. Yeah, I think I liked giving him my 2 blues there, actually, and just go for the blind Azalea. And he does pitch away the channel like Frigid. So that is interesting. I can make the read that he doesn't have an ice card in Arsenal. I think that's a fair assumption that there's no ice card in Arsenal. It is strange to me that he has pitched away a channel like Frigid. That indicates to me that it's a high priority Arsenal target there. I believe while we were playing, my read was that it was another channel like Frigid. For those of you who have already watched the video from his perspective, you'll know that I would have been wrong. And here, I think the correct answer would be... I don't like this line. I don't know what I was going for. Or rather, I guess there were two possible reads there. One would have been the channel like Frigid, and the other would be like a second Aether Ice Vein. Probably red. Because we know he needs to be able to cash in on these chills. So like a red or a yellow Aether Ice Vein, I think this line is actually pretty good. It does end up being the blue. And so this taking was actually quite bad. I think the correct play there was opt the card to the bottom and blind Azalea. I'm curious what I draw here and to see if I would have been rewarded for it. Obviously that you can't always look in hindsight and go, hey, I would have gotten rewarded. What's going on here? Should take 2 because I AB'd 1. Alright, so he just plays the Ice Bolt naturally on his turn. And then follows it up with the thing. And it would have been a red in the ledger, yeah. So I would have been able to come in for 5 dominate last turn. Even through the Ice Veins. Had I gone for the blind Azalea. So when he does this, I do decide to use my Tunic resource to block 1 Arcane. I realized I was getting very low, and that I had spare resources on my turn to play it out, so I might as well block that out. I don't think I'm ever getting that Tunic resource back. And this also gets me out of potential situations where on this turn where I go for something, he tries to kill me in response to me claiming my Tunic resource. So this line is a bit spicy. I'm quite happy with this turn here. So I know that he has... No, I don't know that he has that. I don't know what's in his arsenal. Correction. But this is where these endgame states. I'm pitching to activate Death Dealer, and he is racking his brain as to what to do here. I've shown him the blue, which is actually pretty notable. Now, because I was because I had this sigil, I was kind of greedy here in making it look like I was more susceptible to dying than I actually was. And we just come in for 8. And the theory is that this makes him either throw 3 cards, or, yeah, he either has to throw 3 cards or just die. Or rather, sorry, let me first throw 3 cards or like throw Tunic and stuff. But basically, he has to do something here because he's on 2. And the goal is I want him to show me his hand, so I know what I'm playing around. And I take this 4, which was particularly entertaining because he now blocks 8. And I know that he's only got 1 card left in his hand. So I can snaps and then go bracers, go down to AB1, which this makes it look like he kills me with Moon. We get to come in for 5. And he goes Moon for game, and we have the sigil. So very, very close game. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times against Iyslander, that's how it is. If he had drawn a Strider's target, I lose in that game. But the Wounded Bull lists are able to tempo a lot better, but they struggle to close out on occasion due to the lack of Strider's targets. All right, game 2. I believe he went first last game, so I'm going first this game. I think we were just discussing a few things in there. Yeah, so I'm going first this game. This is not a great going first hand. Things like Rabble... Sorry. Things like Rabble aren't great on turn 0. You might leak 1 damage off of them, but ideally I want to find it dominate here if I can, and also maintain an arsenal. So, whoops, went too far. So I'm just going to pitch the Rabble here to load the headshot, draw a card, and then we're going to look for a dominate with Read the Glide Path, and ideally get this Bolton Shot into the arsenal. I do find it. And come in for 8 with dominate. And he's probably going to play an action, which means that's probably doing 9 there. So I basically got 6 damage turn 0. Or 5, because he had the sink. Aether Ice Vein comes through, and again, we're going to save this blue for playing through a turn, and I'm just going to pitch or discard the spare arrow that I have. This turn, unfortunately, is a bit fragile to hypothermia, but there's not too much I can do about that. I guess it's also fragile to Blizzard. Yeah, I guess it's very fragile to Channel Lake Frigid, too. And unfortunately, I'm stuck in a position where this hand is going to end up with a red headshot in Arsenal, which is not where I want to be, but it's where we're at. Sorry if you can hear that train in the background. Going down to 1 floating, and we just get to come in for 7. It's not great, but after they've just casted a Channel Lake Frigid, they really don't want to block. He wants to hold at least 2 cards here, 1 to Arsenal, 1 to Coronet Peak. So this Bolton Shot is going to leak damage most of the time. It looks like he goes ahead and takes all of it. And we'll get to just move to Arsenal. Now this is a very awkward draw under Channel Lake Frigid. And so I end up casting both of my sigils and ABing 2, I believe. Because I'm not like in love with casting this headshot out of Arsenal, and it's really difficult for me to actually hold back a card to do that. So I've got the pitch. I'm just going to play my sigils out, pitching the Deadeye, and then we get to AB2 and avoid the discard effect. And then he's also had to make it to where he needed to pitch that card to keep the Channel Lake Frigid anyways. So I end up getting the full 3 block out of that headshot. So this channel, I was able to get 9 value out of my hand, which 9 value out of your hand on a Channel Lake Frigid is pretty good. Most of the time under Channel Lake Frigid, your hand is a lot less efficient than that. And he's also down in Arsenal, which means I'm able to just pass back pretty comfortably. He does draw the chill. That lets him play the... or keep the Channel Lake Frigid in play. And looking at this hand, I'm really only going to be able to just cast... I guess let's dive into that. I'm only going to be able to cast this headshot, really. I don't have the pitch to comfortably play out like a buff into headshot, because that would cost 3. No. Yeah, that would cost 3. And then if I got a frostbite, I'd lose my ability to arsenal. And that's just not really the risk I want to take there. So I do opt to do it this way, where I am able to come in with a headshot for 4. I could have Arcane Barriered last turn with this red in the ledger. I think they're actually... It might have been correct to AB2, pitching 2 cards. Because there was the chance that he just blocks this and doesn't fire anything back. I expect this to be the last turn of Channeling Frigid, so I'm comfortable arsenaling the Seek and Destroy. But yeah, I do think I made a bit of a mistake there. In that last turn, I should have Arcane Buried with the red in the ledger, in addition to the take aim. He just plays another chill and passes, and we are luckily free from Channel Lake Frigid, and we also have the blues in hand to play. So I'm pretty happy with this game state. Does cast the Cold Snap, and as I mentioned before, Cold Snap is normally something that we don't really want to pay for. We don't have the resources to pay for it most of the time, and we can blind Azalea pretty comfortably, even if we don't hit something good on the opt. However, I had double blue, and this turn was only going to cost 1 plus the Frostbite. So I had the spare resource, and it also is a Seek and Destroy that I'm maintaining. And as I've mentioned before, Seek and Destroy is one of the most powerful cards in this matchup. So I had the resources. I'm going to use them in order to still get to use the Seek and Destroy. I don't remember what I opted on top, but it looks like it was an arrow. And because of that, I'm just going to dominate here. And he's... Typically, I would take the Waning Moon damage in order to maintain an arsenal. However, it is a blue headshot. I'm just going to Arcane Barrier with it. I don't... Is that correct? I don't know. It's definitely debatable. But either way, I do end up getting to force through this Seek and Destroy, which is quite big. Alright, so we got double chill procs. And the Aether Ice Vein. The nice part is that, again, as mentioned, he is under Seek and Destroy. Oh, that's interesting. I thought of a different line here. Looking at it. Sorry, okay. So he is under Seek and Destroy, which means I could give up Tunic and a blue and the take aim in order to pay all the taxes. I take 5 arcane here, but then I still get to fire back this red in the ledger. Is that better, though, is the question. I could also give him red in the ledger and my Tunic resource and the Bolton shot. No, I think this is fine. I get to mitigate one of the arcane as well. And I get to keep a strong 1-card hand with this Tunic. And I immediately draw into a Seek and Destroy, which I felt slightly on the back foot as far as tempo. I didn't want to let him hold a 4 or a big hand and throw another Ice Vein comfortably. So I went ahead and played the Seek and Destroy in order to make sure that he couldn't comfortably Ice Vein me again. And it looks like it did make him uncomfortable, because we got his Tunic resource and 2 pieces of equipment. Probably so he can throw an Ice Vein back, yep. and still maintain an arsenal. So again, this is a situation where we're just going to be pitching or discarding. And actually, I guess we could probably pay and just arsenal this drill shot. But we've luckily been able to get through these Aether Ice Veins relatively unscathed. The damage or the health gap has, or at this Insidious Chill, we've been able to get through relatively unscathed. The health gap has not closed off the back of it. It's getting closer though. Probably a little closer than I'm happy with. So I do have the drill shot in arsenal. I want to throw something like Ravenous Rabble into drill shot next turn. I don't have an arrow to load, so this Deadeye and E-Strike would probably have just translated to 2 cards going in for 5, and I'm given the opportunity to block for 6 with them, and I'm just going to take that there. I'm holding this yellow Glide Path in order to make sure I can play through a Frostbite. The question becomes, do I want to pay to keep this drill shot, or try to Azalea it away? My first impression watching this back is that I would want to pay for this. Maybe not. Okay, so I chose not to pay, and it looks like I got rewarded for it. Get to come in with the Rabble for 4. This is another thing, I don't know if I was mentioning it before when I was casting Rabbles, but you do have to be careful to give your opponent a priority window before the reveal. There is fringe situations with like Brain Freeze where they'll pull your card out of hand and put it on top before the reveal. So just make sure you're giving your Iyslander opponents proper priority windows. Because I chose not to pay, I got rewarded. Should have 1 float here, right? Oh, no, I just paid for the Arcane. I got rewarded, and I was able to Arcane Barrier 1. We get to just come in with the Bolton shot. Looking back, it probably was correct to just pay. Even firing the drill shot outside of the sink below punish, just firing the drill shot would be threatening the Tunic block, which is basically the same value as taking the health. Unfortunately, this is where the game goes downhill. I drew a hand that blocks 4 and threatens 0. And he plays a channel. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to have a big enough health lead to play through this kind of huge tempo loss. But continuing through, we'll see what we can do. Iyslander can definitely stumble. Here it's just a Brothers in Arms for 4. The hand is quite bad, so I'm just going to block and try and live through this Channel Lake Frigid. Now it is a Rain Raised as an Arsenal, so we need to blind Azalea and just try and find something to fire back. Now the expectation is that I'm going to need to pay 2 to fire off an arrow if I hit it. He accidentally grabbed that to his hand, but the expectation is I'm going to need 2. It looks like it's actually going to end up needing to be 3, just due to the Frostbite he's going to make, so it's just not looking good. Yep, makes a Frostbite, and then he's going to fire Waning Moon for 3. Notably, he's firing this before I get to see what Azalea in. Oh, he should have. And we hit a Knock the Death Whistle. Probably the biggest whiff in the deck. And I start chuckling at the fact that I just saw all 3 Rain Razors in a row. Had to point that out because he never got to see the 3rd one. So I do cast the Knock the Death Whistle here. Because I really can't afford to have it in Arsenal while Channel Lake Frigid is in play. It's just too expensive. I don't know that this is actually correct, but it is what I decided to do. I'm just going to put a blue headshot on top to try and get through this. And then I do take the 3. Which obviously I knew the 3 was coming. So maybe I should have just held back and tried to AB. Takes a very strange line here, where it's just going to make 2 Frostbites. And I decide... Oh, I think this was a pretty big misplay from me. Wait, no, never mind. It's fine. I think. Okay, so he's going to amulet me. Which I could pitch to activate Tunic and then pay for the amulet to maintain my drill shot, but I choose not to. Choose to just take the discard. I'm going to pitch to cross trap. But either way, as you've seen, this game is kind of spiraled out of control. I got disrupted a little bit too hard and wasn't able to get him into range where he had to start blocking. It lets me resolve the opt. I put it to the bottom as... I don't actually know what I'm looking for at this point. If you're ever lower health than Iyslander, you probably have already lost the game. Just because Striders exist. And I just choose to pass. And he comes in with another Red Ice Vein. Just something I can't afford to really do anything about. I need him to stumble hard. Now this was a mistake from my end here, because, well, he moons and I do Tunic to maintain 1 health, but I do know that he has a I know he has a blue bolt in Arsenal. And as soon as I let him draw back up, I've lost the game. Because I need to play the Sigil to get it out of my arsenal, but as soon as I play the Sigil, he can kill me in response. And I know that he can kill me in response. So, I guess it's not really a throw, because I don't think I had a grip on this game, but I guaranteed that I'd lose the game here. I should have played the Sigil at the end of his last turn. I just am in the habit of you play your Sigils as late as possible. Because there's usually not a reason to do it sooner. This would be the one exception. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that game spiraled out of control off of the no arrow hand, where I kind of just lost an entire turn cycle, which gave him the breathing room to play his game plan how he wanted to for the remainder of the game. He leads off with just a wounded bull, which I'm very happy with. And the plan should be to keep... I don't know, there's an argument to keep any of these cards. I choose to keep the buff, which is probably a bit of a gamble. I think keeping the red headshot was probably better. But I get rewarded by drawing arrows and pitch and no other buffs. So the decision I made there ended up being the best outcome. I don't know if was actually the best decision. It's always difficult to gauge. So Azalea, find a take aim, and now this line is purely... Well, I knew I wasn't getting dominate. It was just an opportunity to make sure that I got to use all more cards out of my hand and not leave a stranded card. So we go ahead and leak 5. Red in the ledger on hit really doesn't do pretty much anything into Iyslander, but it was damage, and that was kind of the goal there. Now, unfortunately, I do have this blue headshot in Arsenal, which I am going to need to get out of there. Read the glide path is going to be a big tool in that game plan. Bolton shot's my arrow, headshot's my pitch. Means E-strike should be the discard here. Yep. And here we're just going to be looking for something playable out of Arsenal. The first priority would be an extender, like a buff or like a rabble. Or a Bolton shot. Yeah, or a Bolton shot is a great option because I do have the buff for it. Now, there was an argument to play around the cold snap, in which case I would have used glide first. However, using glide second gives me further information on what I'll be drawing. Not that it's actually the most relevant here, but it is what I decided to do. I also choose to Arcane Barrier 1, I believe. Yeah, I Arcane Barriered 1. He played the Frostbite just to make sure that I had to pitch a card before firing this attack and hopefully disrupt me. But I do Arcane Barrier 1 because the plan is that I'm going to be firing Bolton Shot into Bolton Shot and then Arsenal Blind, which means he can't be making more Frostbites, so might as well. This line gets slightly punished by Blizzard, although I don't think it's the end of the world if he Blizzards me, because I lose out on 4 damage, but he loses out on an entire card, so it's not really that bad of a trade. Fortunately, our options on the first opt were blue Bolton Shot to Arsenal, which we chose not to, and then drew into the knock, which is not ideal for arsenaling, but we did leak quite a bit of damage, which is quite good. Now, this hand is not great. That's what I got to say about that. However, I am still just going to take it, and there's a better chance that I play the Read the Glide Path, so we just pitch away the Deadeye for now. Oh, I must have glanced away. I didn't see what I looked at. I assumed he was during that debating time, because I'm not listening to the audio from the games during the these discussions, I was assuming that he was thinking in response to the cross rep, not me thinking on the opt. So we do find a Seek and Destroy, which, while it's not ideal, it's manageable. Like, this is a playable turn. Fires the Ice Bolt, which I unfortunately can't really afford to block much of. I suppose there is a world where I Arcane Barrier and just let my turn fizzle. I don't know that I particularly like that, but I guess there is a universe where that happens. Either way, we're just going to play through the Frostbite and draw. Then we get to come in with this Bolt and Shot for 5. Which, here's another useful part of Sigil, is this is representing an on-hit, and I'm attacking with 2 cards in hand. This puts him in a situation where he has to be afraid of Rain Razors. And I'm able to make it look like I could have a Rain Razors while also... it looks like I have Rain Razors, but I'm also not being inefficient at the same time due to this Sigil. And he chooses to block Exact and ends up saving the Sink below, thinking that there might be another attack off like the Bullseye Bracers or something. Or I guess the kind of other dream scenario would be like an E-Strike, draw a card there for 5. And he plays into that, assuming I had 2 cards left. I had go again, I would probably be doing something else. And Sigil punished him there. And he chooses just Arsenal. It's great. And we're revealing the Sigil, which again is very powerful, having it as the ability to opt and then still get the value. Notably here, nice interaction in that Skullbone Crossrep reveals as cost, but after that cost is paid, that card does not need to still be in your arsenal on resolution. So I'm able to instant the Sigil of Solace in response to the Channel Lake Frigid, so I don't have to pay the extra for it, and still get the opt that I was originally planning on getting, because I'd already paid the cost for Crossrep. Yep, so we Death Dealered, Frostbite was cleared, and then I played the Rabble. Luckily, I drew into the blue, which means that I get to play the Rabble and the Fatigue Shot, and then I also get to Arsenal this Remorseless comfortably. I think I was actually supposed to play this Remorseless and Arsenal the Fatigue Shot, as he did not have an Arsenal. Or rather, no. The reason was, on the turn that they play Channel Lake Frigid, their most common play line is going to be just a Coronet Peak. I suppose, actually no, like a Wounded Bull or something is actually pretty common as well. So I think it's actually pretty debatable. Yeah. I'm not actually sure which one I prefer. It's definitely close as to which arrow would be better there. Either way, he Coronet Peaks me, and I'm just going to get rid of the red 0 cost. Red 0 cost buff. There was a discussion point to get... I guess I can back up to that. There was a discussion to get rid of the Drill Shot. However, I do want to end up with an arrow in my arsenal, so Drill Shot being in my arsenal, obviously it's the goal. And then I want to be able to play this Remorseless pitching a yellow. So then it was the last two unaccounted for cards were Deadeye and the Read the Glide Path. And obviously the card with more physical block and more pitch value is the one I'm going to be keeping here, because I know that I'm not going to be playing it out. So we just come in with the Remorseless. It obviously doesn't have the D-Reacts locked from Arsenal clause anymore, as it was not loaded face up this turn. But it doesn't matter too much. We've got the health lead. We just want to threaten some damage each turn under Channel Lake Frigid, so he doesn't have complete reign to try and keep this channel out at longer. Yep. He blocks 7, which I don't think I agree with. I think he should have leaked 1, but I think I ended up dropping a comment on his video regarding it once I saw his point of view on that line. So yeah, just comes in with the Aether Ice Vein, and he's probably going to hold the Channel Lake Frigid. So I'm looking at the Drill Shot and Arsenal that I should be able to play. This Headshot, I don't really want Arsenal, so I'm just going to discard the Headshot. This turn is looking like it's just going to be release the tension pitching Deadeye into play the Arsenal and Arsenal that Rabble, because Rabble is a pretty good Arsenal target. We are taking a decent amount of damage here, but he correctly identifies that he needs to keep his channel around. He can't really afford to just only have one Frostbite. Channel being out ends up being representing way too much more tax. And again, we're able to do this, play the buff into the just because he doesn't have an Arsenal. If he had an Arsenal, I would not be able to take a line like this. It's interesting that he blocks 5 there. I don't think he needed to throw the Cornet Peak quite yet. This is actually a really, really good hand if there's no Frostbite. This is a nasty hand. And unfortunately, he has the Blizzard, which kind of cuts our turn very short. So I looked at Tunic at first and realized that there's no reason to Tunic first. I can Tunic later, because I'm going to have to pitch anyways. Actually, am I going to have to pitch anyways? Yes. Yeah, all the Tunic first would allow me to do would be like E-Strike for 7 at the back. And I don't think that's worth my Tunic here. Actually, what was the card revealed on top? I've already forgotten. Red in the ledger. Okay, so back to this decision tree. I know there's a red in the ledger on top. If I'm getting taxed 3, the assumption is that's my Tunic. Yeah, actually, maybe I was supposed to Tunic first. Said I could just E-Strike for 7 and Arsenal the Bolton Shot. There... Actually, I might have been looking at... Yeah, what I was probably looking at was recognizing he's at 14, and it's already given 1 card, so we pitch the Rain Razors. Then I end up pitching the Bolton Shot to E-Strike, draw a card, leaving 1 float, snaps, Death Dealer, load the red in the ledger, draw, Tunic, fire the red in the ledger, represent 14, which means I'm getting additional cards. I think that was the line I was looking at the time. So the decision point, and that's because I want to make sure that I'm using my Snapdragons, and I feel like this is a reasonable turn for me to use them. Yeah. It actually only translates to 3 extra damage. So maybe E-Strike for 7 was just better. Either way, as we'll see shortly, oh, I went too far. He ends up taking the 4, and then he uses a second Blizzard, and I get rewarded very heavily for saving my Tunic, which, as I mentioned on second thought, I'm not 100% sure I actually needed to do it that way. But I got rewarded very heavily for saving the Tunic. But it was funny because he had just pitched a Tunic or a Blizzard the previous turn to play this Insidious Chill. So I was not expecting double Blizzard. But at the very least, I got 4 damage through, and those Blizzards, he had to use 2 cards to strand 2 cards in my hand. So it's not the end of the world. It wasn't like crazy inefficient, but definitely frustrating. Or no, he got 3 cards off his 2 Blizzards. So it was good. It was just nothing too crazy. Now he just comes back with the Wounded Bull, and I have... Did I put the E-Strike in Arsenal? Yeah. So I put the E-Strike in Arsenal, and I think it's debatable. However, I think it makes sense trying to hold the yellow in my hand as an option for pitching. Yeah, I'm not actually sure which I prefer. However, yeah, this hand looks quite good. I've got the Tunic available to play through a Frostbite if needed. And he brain freezes me with a Chill proc. Now we do actually... I went to take it back like, oh, I gotta choose what I'm discarding, but it doesn't really matter what I choose, because then he chooses afterwards. So it doesn't matter showing him that information. So his first thought is to put the Bolton Shot on top. And we kind of talk through the different play lines I have here, depending on which he puts on top. If he puts the Release the Tension on top, I can E-Strike, draw a card, bottoming the red in the ledger, Tunic, load the Bolton Shot, then Release the Tension, fire the Bolton Shot for 6, get a blind Arsenal. Sorry, E-Strike, draw a card, snaps. And we'd be looking at an 11 damage turn with an Arsenal, potentially going up to 14. That playline, I could do something similar. If the Release the Tension, no. If the red in the ledger goes on top, I could do something similar where I go in for E-Strike for 5, draw a card, pitch the yellow, load the red in the ledger, fire that for 5. That maintains my Tunic resource, but only comes in for 10. But again, has the upside of potentially being extra damage off the top. But I think the thing we concluded was that it really didn't matter too much what he did. All of my lines were very, very close and kind of depended on if I wanted to use my Tunic resource or not. But either way, the point was that I was going to be able to threaten to kill him here if he didn't give me cards. And my goal here is to not let him hold that many cards anymore. So I believe he does end up choosing the Bolton shot. It all ends up being very close because, like I mentioned, I get to draw it, whatever he puts on top, and then I bottom some random card, so I have a lot of flexibility in playing through whatever he ends up doing here. The other interesting thing to note is if for some reason I felt like it, this cross wrap is resolving and now I get to opt, and I do have the option of sending it to the bottom if I really wanted to. Yep, so then I believe I'm just going to go for the E-Strike draw card. And I do choose for the higher damage line, the one that potentially represents 14. Obviously, assuming I draw a buff off the top after the Bolton shot, it would represent 14, which would demand 2 cards out of his hand, which then means he wouldn't be able to hold enough cards to Aether Ice Vein, probably for the rest of the game, is the goal here. And he chooses to take that, which tells me I need to extend here. And a Death Dealer and load. We draw the Rain Razors, which is very, very nice. Now we get to come in for 6, and if he only gives me 1 card, the Rain Razors will kill him because his Tunic has been drill shotted. And he does try to block with only 1 card and go to 2. And he dies to the Rain Razors here. And yeah, he explains here that he had the opportunity to Strider's Ice Vein to kill the turn. However, I don't know. It might have been worth, but like if he Striders to kill the turn, I discard the Release the Tension and pitch this and take 2. But he's already gone down to 5 and doesn't have Striders anymore. I don't know. It's definitely a consideration. It might have been correct for him. But obviously me drawing the Rain Razors was kind of the icing on the cake. Because I was kind of gambling that I would find damage off the top. Granted, it also could have been something like a drill shot that I could bullseye racers in, another Bolton shot, any buff. There were a lot of Ravenous Rabble. There were a bunch of things I could have drawn off the top there that would have made that play good enough to threaten more than 2 cards out of his hand. So I'm going first. We're just going to try and dig for a Dominate. I find the E-Strike, but there's no real reason to E-Strike. I don't like E-Strike for 7, so it's just going to be a blind Azalea here. There was the cheeky play where I could fire that for 5 and try and Rain Razors it to 7 into 6. maybe leak some damage, but I don't think that would be the play. So we come in for 7 dominate. I'm just going to throw the Rain Razors here in order to just get the extra 2 damage out of it. I don't think I'm getting back to my pitch in this matchup very often. So I have the opportunity for 2 free damage here. There is like a small argument to hold it, to try and pair it with this Bolton Shot if this was a different matchup. However, if you draw a hand with like Bolton Shot and Rain Razors and a bunch of other gas, against Iyslander, they play a channel like Frigid and it just doesn't do anything. So when you have the window to guarantee damage, you typically want to just take that window because you don't know what your next turn is going to look like. My voice is dying already. And I'm only a little over halfway through. Yep, Ice Vein, I'm just going to discard. Amulet, I'm just going to discard. Now, here, typically you would look to opt first, but I'm leading straight with the Rain, or the Bolton Shot, because I want to be able to play the Bolton Shot and the Sigil and Arsenal, and I don't want to pitch anything if there's a Frostbite. So I'm going to deny the opt on my own, or I'm going to deny myself the opt, just to make sure that I get to play out my cards. And there's another Ice Vein. Luckily, this Fatigue Shot is debatably playable without pitching. It's kind of a weird situation where he may not want to play this Insidious Chill. Like, his hand could be clunky to where he doesn't want to cast it immediately. And that's what I'm going to try and be gauging here. Rain Razors just goes to the bottom because I'm planning on playing the Rabble, and I'd much prefer to have the 4 damage. Get another yellow, so it's only 3. So he takes it, and I try to be a little too cheeky here with the Tunic. I have a very strong opinion when playing Iyslander that whenever your opponent activates Tunic while they have no resources floating, and you have the ability to make a Frostbite out of Arsenal, you just make the Frostbite there. It's almost always very clearly telegraphed that they don't want to pitch a card, so you tell them that they have to pitch a card. I was kind of hoping here that he, one, would think that I was baiting him into using it, or that he would have a hand that didn't comfortably want to play it out. I don't think he wanted to play it out immediately, but it is what it is. He did play it because it was very clear that it would get an entire extra card from me. And in this case, I gambled to try and save that entire extra card, and I ended up losing my Tunic resource for it. But we pitched that and come in for 5. He goes net neutral on health. Fatigue Shot ended up being quite good there when he has 2 big attacks. And I get to Arsenal this Sigil. Deadeye is interesting, but I think it goes to the... No. I'm leaning towards bottom there. Oh, actually, maybe not. Yeah, I think top is fine. Because now I get to glide, try and find a dominate here. Oh, this is interesting. Well, it's not that interesting. I don't like this line. I think I prefer just playing Deadeye and dominating, having to pitch. I don't know, I think this was a little too cheeky and maybe a little too aggressive on usage of bullseye bracers. But we end up firing for 7, burning the bracers. And this is an opportunity where, I mean, once I've already committed to that line, this is kind of like how you want to use your bracers. These bullseye bracers translated to 7 damage, because otherwise I would have had a card stranded in my hand. And I think anytime, I'm usually looking for my first opportunity to get probably 5 off bracers, 4 to 5. It's usually the goal. Sometimes you get a bit less, sometimes you get a bit more. But having an opportunity to use it for 7 is, yeah, just pretty good. Because otherwise I would have ended with a spare card in my hand. And I get punished because he has the Wounded Bull. On that other line, I would have been able to dominate the Fatigue shot. And obviously that would have felt great. But regardless, we're off to a pretty good health lead here. He's given up his ability to Arsenal. And yeah, just all in all, feeling pretty good here. This is a hand where I'm comfortable taking it a bit slow. I've got the Deadeye and Arsenal. So my first thought there was to use the Bolton shot to block as well, but I can see the argument to not. It's something that I'd like to be able to Arsenal. However, now I need to draw into an extender in order to play out everything in my hand efficiently. So I think I should have blocked with the yellow Bolton. I'm good at the game and drew the extender that I was looking for. I had 2 chances to find it and I got it on the second one. But yeah. So we come in for a nice cheeky 11. And so the Aether Ice Fiends begin. Got the yellow Bolton and Arsenal. I would ideally like to be able to hold 2 cards here to be able to E-strike. I discard the Seek and Destroy, which I think I also got greedy here or forgot about Amulet of Ice. Because obviously I get punished pretty hard here by this amulet. But I go ahead and just do that, which, again, there might have been an argument to just fire the Bolton shot. Because he did pitch away the ice card that he... Oh, that was it, sorry. Let's jump back. Sorry, yeah, I was reading something. On this Aether Ice Vein, we saw him fuse with a Blizzard and then pitch the Blizzard. It's obviously possible that it's not another ice card, or that there is another ice card, but based on the fact that he no-blocked here, I came in for 11. I guess he used his Tunic resource to block with the gloves. But then he intentionally held all of these cards and then chose to reveal and pitch that ice card. There's a pretty decent chance that that final card there is something like a... I mean, I guess it could be like a Channel Lake Frigid, But I think if it's an ice card, or let me think back through that. If it was a 3-block, I think he would have wanted to block with it. No, if it was an ice card, he should have blocked with the Brain Freeze that he pitched last turn and just revealed whatever he's arsenaling. Yeah, I think the Brain Freeze would have been expendable. So the only thing that it could be in like that vein that I think would line up with him playing it efficiently, because he's sacrificed 3-block in order to Waning Moon for 2, which is not a great trade. So that gives me the read that it's not a blue ice card. And that's why I'm comfortable here playing the cross-wrap, because I don't think I'm going to get disrupted. I think the most likely read here would be that it's going to be another Aether Ice Vein, or a Wounded Bull, or I think it's a big red card. Yeah, I'm calling it as a red, or a powerful red. Probably one that's only a 2-block. So I think Wounded Bull would be my first guess, or an Aether Ice Vein. And because of that, I'm comfortable taking the opt here and not risking losing my Tunic to the to a Frostbite. Yep, Wounded Bull. And I choose to just take it. This hand is quite good. Outside of a channel like Frigid, I can comfortably play through 1 Frostbite. This is actually quite annoying though, because I'm going to lose probably 2 or 3 cards out of my hand. Now, it is nice because I'm in a position here where I could go... Well, I guess I have a couple of options. One, I can discard Take Aim, or I discard a card first for the chill, and then I AB 2, and I leave 1 floating. At that point, I'm able to probably E-Strike draw a card, although that is a bit risky. If I go E-Strike draw a card and he amulets me there, that's a problem. But the point being, if I discard and then pay 2 and leave 1 floating, that leaves me the flexibility of Tunic to block or to pay for the amulet. Or if he doesn't amulet, I have the opportunity to use the Tunic plus the floating resource to pay for my Red in the Ledger load and fire. And if he does amulet me, I can just go into an E-Strike for 7. So I do choose to get rid of the Glide Path instead. I think I prefer getting rid of the Take Aim in this situation. It immediately pops the Amulet, which is what I was pretty much expecting. So I get to just Tunic and pay for it there. And now, depending on what I opt, there is a discussion to go for the Snaps line. If it was a yellow or a blue, I think I go for the Snaps. Although actually, no, I do go for it here. So I'm going to go draw a card. And hope I draw blue or yellow, which I do. And this lets me translate, instead of just E-Strike for 7 Arsenal a card, I get to go E-Strike for 5 and do another 5 plus Arsenal a card. Sadly, I draw the Knock, which is not a great Arsenal target, but I'm going to take it as an Arsenal anyways, because I know he doesn't want to block any regardless. So we take him to 3, which this is starting to get very sketchy for him, which is exactly what I need. And he gets the red Aether Ice Vein. Not what I want to see. Unfortunately, I need to hold this blue and I need to hold this arrow, and I need to hit something good off of cross wrap, so we just have to discard our buffs. So finding an extender is the goal here. Rebel's an extender. And again, giving him all of his priority windows on all of this is very important. Comes in with the bolt, which, because he has the bolt plus moon plus striders, I make the decision here that if I commit to blocking arcane, I'm just kind of dead. I need to be able to I need him to not have the striders target here, and then I need to be able to kill him through these 3 cards, which I can, or I think I should be able to do. I'm also only on AB1 at this point, so I would have had to commit to that very early on. We reveal the rabble, which now says that I can kill him if he doesn't have the Strider's target, which clearly he doesn't, because he goes ahead and blocks. Reload the Remorseless and draw. And here you have to do a little bit of quick math. He's got his best case scenario is Tunic, Strider's Aether Hail, plus Waning Moon, which would be 5 Arcane, and that would require all of his cards. If I lead with Ravenous Rabble, I still have the 1 float, which means I demand a card out of his hand. Actually, I guess I could lose the game from this point if he had that and I drew a if I revealed a yellow or a blue. But it is what it is. I'm going to play under the assumption that I'm going to reveal a red, or at least hope to. Because yeah, if I just fired the Remorseless, he'd be able to block with 1 card, Arsenal, and then I just die on the next turn, is the assumption. So I needed to go for it here. Luckily he only had 2 blocks, and I do reveal the red, so he does die from this point. But again, another very, very close game, where it really comes down to just, does he have the Strider's target? Alright, he goes first and just throws the Wounded Bull, and it looks like I decide to hold the buff again. And reward it as usual. But unfortunately, yeah, he pitch Heart into Channel Lake Frigid on my turn 1. Feels pretty bad. So I'm going to draw. Now, firing the Bolt and Shot costs 2 resources. So we're going to pay 2 there. I'm going to pay 1 to fire the Bolt and Shot, pitching the Glide. Actually, no, I think I should just play the Glide here. Now, under Channel Lake Frigid, I really don't want to be arsenaling either of these cards. So the goal is just to play out the entire hand. I do see a blue on top, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that there. That'll give me the opportunity to actually play something with Death Dealer. Ideally. And so yeah, representing a 9 damage turn through Channel Lake Frigid is still pretty good. So he plays Coronet Peak, I pay 1, and then play Double Sigil. And I'm at 46, so I'm chilling. Now, sadly, I am going to have to arsenal this buff under Channel Lake Frigid, which does not feel good. I have to hope he can't keep it. Oh yeah, this is real bad if he gets to keep this Channel Lake Frigid. So he plays a Cold Snap from hand. Is fine. I'm not gonna pay for it. I can't afford to do it. I can't afford to pay for anything here. And he plays a Blue Brothers in Arms. Now, if he had another ice card, he could Waning Moon afterwards, and that would be like real big punish. And actually, I think that probably should have been my read, is that that's what he was going for. Interesting. Yeah, if he has another ice card here, he should be casting it, or using it to Waning Moon. Oh, and he thought that I was waiting on like reactions and stuff. Oh no, he does use the Waning Moon. Yeah, so I get kind of shafted here. I should have blocked. I think the hard cast Cold Snap was a pretty good indicator that he was going to be doing this. So I think this was a mistake from me that I should have. I end up just blocking with those for 2 instead of throwing them for like 5 in front of the what's it called, brothers. So we're just gonna hardcast a Rebel. Obviously I can't afford to do anything else under Channel Lake Frigid, so we'll just play this out. Luckily we hit the red, but yeah, I got greedy on that last turn. I definitely should have thrown the drill shot in front of the Blue Brothers. So he comes into the Wounded Bull, and normally I'd be like, I'm going to be out of Channel Lake Frigid. I want to keep my hand, but obviously a triple arrow hand is not great. So I'm just going to throw 2 cards in front. Try and maintain my health advantage here for a little bit longer. And just continue on with my day. You get to leave that on top. You will make a Frostbite. I think I should be responding to this with Tunic, as I will be able to, I'll be able to Azalea in the Bolden Shot and just fire it for 4. Just so that I'm able to represent 8 off of 2 cards here through a Frostbite. I'm not looking for crazy on hits here. I'm not looking for massive turns. I'm just trying to be efficient and try and maintain this health lead. And he goes ahead and takes it all, which means I'm probably getting Ice Fanged back. Yep. This is an opportunity for me to... Yeah, so we get to pay for those 2, and he does choose to Amulet me, which is annoying because I was hoping to cast the Seek and Destroy with this Fatigue Shot, but it's not the end of the world. I think I end up losing the Seek and Destroy. Yeah, it should be the Seek and Destroy, because I'm going to cast this Fatigue Shot, and I'd rather have 1 extra resource. It just feels real bad losing a Seek and Destroy, or 2, or 3, like... I think I've burned through most of them at this point. Yep, and he's just going to immediately go for the Frostbite creation, which I'm not actually sure I agree is the correct way to do it. Because it should be pretty clear, because I pitched a yellow last turn, that I have at least a yellow. So unless he was planning on winning mooning, there wasn't a need to do it there, unless his hand dictated that he was going to have to do it that way. Yeah, so now he's got all 3 Ice Veins out. Or sorry, Chillings in play. Which is going to make things very bad as soon as he has any breathing room. So we'll pitch to Death Dealer. He does have to pitch a Fighting Spirit to play this Polar Blast. It's a pretty good indicator that he's going to have multiple, probably multiple attacks in hand, which means this Fatigue Shot is hopefully going to get some value. Now, I E-Strike Snaps, and I don't really know why. The only thing I could think is that I wanted to greed them because I knew that I'd be struggling to have another turn anytime soon due to these Ice Veins. But I still don't think it was a good usage of Snaps. I have to pay or discard 3 times. And we're going to go ahead and pay through all that. AB 2, and then I get to AB 1 more on the moon. So I'm taking 4 damage there. And again, I don't have my Tunic resource. There's a pretty good chance there's an ice card in Arsenal. So I'm just going to fire the Bolton Shot off the top just because I want to try and leak damage anywhere that I can. There might... Actually, I think there might have been a stronger argument to just hold it in Arsenal. Because, yeah, okay, so Iyslander doesn't use 5-card hands very efficiently, so I probably should have just passed priority. The only issue there is if I pass priority and he plays something out of Arsenal, then I can't fire the arrow anymore. I think that's still fine, though. I think I was supposed to pass priority on that last turn instead of attacking. I think I'm able to get away with it this game, but in general, it's probably better not to let him block with 1 card comfortably. Because Iyslander really doesn't like 5-card hands that much, or doesn't really love them. Especially if they've arsenaled like a red Ice Vein or something like that. But yeah, he plays a yellow Ice Vein here. Same deal. He's coming in for 6 Arcane. I get to block 3 Arcane and lose my entire hand. It's annoying, but I'm only losing 3 damage on the turn cycle, which is really not bad in the grand scheme. Because he hasn't been able to play out of Arsenal off the back of these. Yep, and this is going to be discard, discard, Sigil AB2. I went to go AB2 and remembered there's no hit trigger for the damage dealt, so I have to Sigil first and then AB2. And then obviously he's going to moon, and I get to AB 1 more there. So again, I actually went even on health on that turn cycle because I got to play the Sigil. But he was able to get it scolding in Arsenal this time, so I take my 7 there. just a fighting spirit this time, but it looks like I'm finally going to be able to play a turn. And unfortunately, this hand all kind of fits together too well to block with anything. There might have been a debate to block with the knock, but I'd rather hold it just as an opportunity to play through disruption. So we should play the glide path here first. Just see what we're looking at on top. It's a blue headshot. I go ahead and keep it just as pitch because I do like to see my blues in this matchup. And just come in for a casual 10. Nothing too crazy. He takes 5, goes to 5, and I'm not feeling great about this game state. But he had 2 non-blocks, so that's nice. And I was able to tunic to pay for the Coronet Peak. Yeah, this is not good. This hand's real bad. I don't know what I do from here. I think I have to blind Azalea. Yeah. Again, there's not that many misses, and luckily we hit this, which now makes this turn real good. Red in the ledger, least effective arrow, and I want to hold the blues if he goes for any arcane. But yeah, that blind Azalea really paid off there. Sadly, he's not firing arcane for me to use these blues effectively, but we are still going to probably get another card. Okay, we're going to get 2 more cards probably. Because he needs to block at least 6, probably 7 if he wants to play anything out of his hand, which means realistically we should get 8. Which means we probably get 2 3 blocks and a Coronet Peak. End up getting 10. I think he's afraid of the Rain Razors. Or unfortunately in another hand where we gotta try and make sure we find something off the top. Because we've been getting stuck with some weird arsenals. Luckily, there aren't too many hard misses in the deck. Like, the worst case scenario would be something like, I was going to say Blue Bolt and Shop, but we've got the Rain Razors, so that's not even that bad. I don't think there are that many real misses in the deck there, which was quite nice. Yep, we see the headshot on top, which means we go... No, I don't have Tunic Resource up. So the lines to look at here would be Death Dealer load the Bolt and Shot. Firebolt and Shot 6 go again into E-Strike for 7 arsenal. 7 into 7 is pretty good, but no, that doesn't seem great either. I think I want to send it to the bottom and try and find something better. Maybe like a buff. Yeah, another buff would be the kind of the best draw here. Yeah, I remember this. This is a weird spot with this Bolt and Shot here. So he does throw those, which gives me a pretty good indicator that he doesn't want to block. He wants to hold his hand. So I'm going to just throw everything at him to make sure he doesn't get to hold a hand and doesn't get to use this Amulet device. And we're just coming in for 3, which he's got to respect and block for 3. And then I'm probably going to follow it up just with the 7 to make sure that I get all of his cards. And actually, there's a pretty reasonable chance with the amount of non-blocks and 2 blocks that he has that this ends up leaking more than just 1 damage here. That was my thought process originally, is that there's a pretty good chance that he's got some 2 blocks. Unfortunately, they were all 3 blocks, so he don't leak as much as I hoped. But this is a perfectly fine hand. He doesn't have an arsenal. I've only got AB1. It's a little bit of a concern. But again, no arsenal is very important. And we just get a drill shot for 10. And I've got 2 floating, so it would have to represent a lot of arcane here, which actually I don't think he even can represent that much. And then I've got the rain razors to go over the top as well. So if he blocks less than 11, he dies. So we see 6, and the sink going to 10, and rain razors pushes it over the top. I think we end up talking about his sideboard decisions here. He changes it up a little bit. We get into our final game. So here there was definitely an argument to take aim, cross-wrap, opt, and look for a dominate. But I choose to just go for the blind Azalea. Find a glide path, which is fine. It's like a weird decision point here where I could like stop the turn right now. However, I decide that I'm going to go ahead and play the bolt and shot for 10. There's a reasonable chance he's got either non-blocks or cards he doesn't want to block with. So there's a decent chance this is either leaks damage or gets to take like, yeah, see we got an ice, or we got 2 ice veins out of his hand. And we get to arsenal the buff, and so we're sitting in a pretty good spot here. As far as turn zeros are concerned, just as a general rule, you kind of want to go all or nothing on your 3-card hand. Like, you don't want to represent something that they can block with 2 cards. You either want them to block with 3 to 4, ideally 4, or not swing at all. And obviously, you also want to hold back a card to arsenal. And because if you're only making a block with 1 or 2 cards, they get to filter out and make their hand better. Oftentimes, they get rid of the worst cards or the cards that don't fit into their hand. So you don't want to give them that control. So in that case, it was an either I attack for 10 or I attack for 0. I'm never going for like a 6 or a 7 there. Unfortunately, he dug and was able to find a Channel Lake Frigid. So I'm immediately realizing that everything is terrible. Not really, just like, yeah. Channel Lake Frigid is annoying. So AB1, pay with the remaining 2. Yeah, I think that was the cleanest thing we could do there, and works. Wait. Yeah, and he arsenals the channel. I was going to say I would have been very surprised if he didn't. Seems a little bit weird that I let off with the cross wrap. I feel like... Oh, I'm probably looking for a dominate. But none of these cards I really want arsenaled. The rabble would be fine. Okay, so we do find the fatigue shot on top, and he chooses not to use the channel here, which indicates that he doesn't have a blue ice card to pitch to keep it next turn. So that was the immediate read that I have there, so I can actually play out my hand a little more safely. We both know he has the channel. If he's not going to do it on the cross strap, he's not going to do it at all this turn, I don't think. It'd be very strange to me if he decided to at a later point in this turn. However, there's actually enough of a chance that I'm hesitant to like release the tension. Yeah, this feels real ballsy for me. Okay, let's dig into that. So he knew what was on top of my deck. When I pitch a yellow... Okay, so... this actually was probably more of a bluff. When I pitch yellow to that, I know he has the Channel Lake Frigid. However, I get priority back as soon as Death Dealer resolves. So if it's a 0-cost arrow, his Channel Lake Frigid doesn't stop my attack. I can still attack with it just fine. I would just have to pitch the fatigue shot. And so he's indicated that he's not comfortable playing the Channel Lake Frigid here. So I'm sort of baiting there to where if it's a 1-cost arrow, you could blow out my turn with this Channel Lake Frigid, but you're not getting the full value out of it because it was an awkward hand to cast the channel that you didn't want to do. If it's a 0-cost card, he gets punished really hard by that. And so he's got to try and make the read on, am I bluffing that I have a good, or that I can still play through the channel? Or am I, or can I actually play through the channel? Like, he's got to try and make the read, but more often than not, if he's committed to not playing it this turn, so that was a pretty good indicator that he probably won't. And I didn't take a line that was going to 100% tell him that his channel blows out the remainder of my turn. Like here, he doesn't know that it's stopping 7 damage, because it might not. The most he knows is that it would stop an arsenal. And so obviously, as soon as Death Dealer resolves, it gets loaded and I fire it right away. He doesn't have another priority window. And I'm in a great spot where I get to arsenal this fatigue shot. Actually, maybe it's not that great. The channel isn't in play quite yet. It's actually fine, because like I can cross trap and then pitch a blue into that. Yeah, so sadly here, I have to just throw the Bolton shot. I need my pitch cards, and I know I'm going to get channeled, so like this Bolton shot isn't putting in as much work as I'd like. But we're just going to cross trap and assume that we get Channel Lake Frigid here, at which point I go rabble into fatigue shot. And he chooses not to cast the Channel Lake Frigid again, which is another interesting decision. And it makes it appear that he doesn't have an ice card yet again. But he takes the 4 and didn't channel. Very strange. So I just choose to Azalea E-Strike for 7. Huh. That was an odd turn cycle. I guess that makes some sense, but I don't know. This, yeah. Yep, and then he's just gonna Waning Moon. And somehow I am not making very good progress this game on his health. Probably because I'm like trying to play around this channel. So in order to fire this headshot, it's going to cost me 5 resources. 3 to load, or 2 to load, 2 to fire, and then 1 more for the frostbite. So I see I've got 4 resources in hand, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it that way. I see a yellow on top. So now I have an interesting decision point where I could bottom it and try and draw into an arrow, or I could leave it on top. That leaves me the opportunity to AB 2 when he goes for the waning moon. Obviously, I choose to bottom the Deadeye so that I'm not going to be ABing and hope that I draw into an arrow. Arrow I draw is the red headshot, which is really not great, but it is what it is. Now, this is an interesting decision point where I do want to get my sigil values, or my sigil value whenever possible, so I don't really want to just pay with that. Seek and Destroy I really don't want to send to the bottom, and I also like my blues. But I can't really play that hard through this turn, so I do finally decide to get rid of the blue headshot. But I think this decision point was a bit difficult. The other thing was, normally I would be like, hey, I'll pay with the blue headshot, and then I'll use one of the floating resources to cast the sigil, because I don't want it getting taxed. However, my follow-up turn I'm hoping to do is Seek and Destroy into headshot, and that gets disrupted by a frostbite if I play that sigil there. So sigil was kind of my backup on... It was my backup plan for if I get a frostbite here. Which again, this is another situation where I'm leaving 2 floating, and he doesn't know if a frostbite disrupts or not because he doesn't know if I have a 1 cost or a 0 cost in my arsenal. And he decided not to give me the frostbite and got punished for it, and we talked about it a little bit afterwards, and it was definitely debatable, because if it was 0 cost, that frostbite would have been kind of pointless, and I think it was something he didn't particularly want to cast. So I do kind of luck out and get to hold on to this sigil. However, yeah, this matchup hurts my head. I guess we'll go with that. Going back on the review, I'm starting to get mentally fatigued trying to talk through all these lines again, and while playing these games, I think I was starting to get to that point as well. Anytime playing as or against Iyslander, there's just a lot more to think about than your normal game of Flesh and Blood. So we do see him block with a second Channel Lake Frigid, which is concerning. Go ahead and arsenal that sigil. Oh, sorry, yeah. So he does block with that Channel Lake Frigid because of the Seek and Destroy. Like, that was his only comfortable way of... or like he wasn't comfortably able to block and arsenal the Channel Lake Frigid, which is kind of the point of Seek and Destroy. So you do get to cross-wrap and reveal this sigil. See another take aim on top, and now I know what I'm drawing. So I should play this sigil, and then I should play this take aim, and then I should pitch to Death Dealer load, draw, and fire. However, I made a mistake that I believe I actually mentioned earlier talking to him, where I load and then play the buff, and now I get punished by this this cold snap, because I've already loaded the arrow that I want, and now I'm getting taxed 2 out of his arsenal instead of just 1. Now I have to pay, and then I have to pay 2 more to fire it. So because I ordered that wrong, I lose this sigil essentially. So I'm considering that misordering costing me 3 health here. You could also make the argument that that's similar to what happened on the previous turn, although the other turn was actually debatable, because it could have been a 0 cost in Arsenal. This, I just think there was never a reason not to play it in the where I play the take aim before the Death Dealer. So he just comes back with the Wounded Bull. Unfortunately, this hand just doesn't block well, so I just have to take 8. There is a discussion to block with the Bolton Shot, however, then that leaves me susceptible to Frostbites and Disruption, so I opt to just hold it. And now this is a turn where I'm seeing I have 1 to 2 extra resources. I have a Rain Razors, and I've got my Snaps and my Bracers. So this is a turn that I'm immediately looking for the opportunity to use my Snaps Bracers to turn this Rain Razors into 4 damage. So we get to come in for 8. With the assumption that we're going to Snaps Bracer, or Rain Razors, Snaps, Bracers, Redden the Ledger for another 8. So it ends up being an 18 damage turn here, which is not the craziest off of 5 cards, right? Was that 5 cards? Or no, I didn't have an Arsenal. It was 4 card 18, but I have to use equipment and stuff for it. Oops, sorry. But he blocks 8, and so I get to go over the top like this. Now, notably, I'm not getting as much damage out of my bracers as I normally would. If I had 1 more card that I couldn't use, otherwise this would have been a crazy turn, because I'd still get an Arsenal. But those bracers, they're really only getting 3 damage, 1 from the bracer text, and then actually probably you could say 1 extra value of that resource that I didn't waste, and then the 2 value of the Rain Razors. So it's probably about a 4 value bracers, which is not bad. When the printed value is 1, if you're getting 4 out of it, that's pretty good. Yeah. But here's the downside to taking a line like that. I can draw no arrows. Past me was not happy with this draw. Because yeah, if I drew an arrow here, I think this game is just over. I was in such a good spot there, but now I've got to throw 3 buffs in front to stop the damage, and just try an Arsenal pass. Interesting. I think I should have held the Seek and Destroy. The only argument to hold the glide path would be is if I'm expecting him to play something out of Arsenal and I plan on ABing it. But I don't think that's a good enough argument. That block there was incorrect, and I should have Arsenaled or blocked with everything but the Seek and Destroy. So you end up taking 5 and discarding. Then we take 1, and I'm going to Tunic to AB the other. Because I am very much so in range of if he draws damage with his Striders. I feel like that's a common theme in this session is if he draws the damage with the Striders, then I lose. So we're just going to play the Read the Glide Path. And I have a pretty good indicator. Well, I'm on AB1, and he's given me a pretty good indicator that he doesn't have the Striders damage from hand, because he really only needs to be able to represent like a 3 or 4 damage spell from hand to kill me here. So he would have just killed me. Maybe not. No, I guess there's no reason for him to do it until after I fire, just in case of like a sigil or something. But the opt here is not an arrow, and I came to the conclusion here that I die as soon as he draws a damage spell. So I have to make the assumption that he doesn't have it here. I only have AB1. I'm dead in like 2 Waning Moon usages. I need to... And I can't deny him an arsenal, because he already has one. So the only way I win here is if I dominate... And yeah, I have to dominate this next attack. So now I'm at another decision point of... Do I play Knock the Death Whistle to find a Dominate Arrow? Or do I blind Azalea and hold the blue as extra pitch, so if he does go for a Striders or something, I can hopefully live through it. So now the quick breakdown on math is, if he has this damage spell in Arsenal and the Striders damage, how much damage am I looking at? If the damage spell in Arsenal can be between 1 and 4, the damage spell from hand is 1 to 5. Assuming I can block 3 with this blue, assuming I went for the blind Azalea, we would be looking at... Actually, there are very few combinations of Striders from hand that I can actually live through here, even if I hit the blind Azalea. Because even if it's like Striders and a Frosting for a Frostbite, I think that stops my arrow. So my head hurts too much to go through all the math here now, but I think the assumption is even something like a Frosting from hand I can't beat. Yeah, like Aether Hail, let's just say Aether Hail in Arsenal, Frosting from hand is 6 Arcane, 2 Frostbites. So I'd have to pay 3 minimum. Okay, I guess I could beat that. But then the Bolt from Arsenal is a problem. But actually, Bolt from Arsenal in general is a problem. It's if I play this Knock. So then, if I'm on the game plan of he doesn't have the damage spell in Arsenal, or sorry, damage spell in hand to Striders, then the question is, what damage spell from Arsenal can we beat? And I did actually screw this math up. Because realistically, it's going to be Frosting, Aether Hail, Ice Bolt, and Emeritus Scolding. And Scolding and Ice Bolt are basically in the same category of taxing me 4. And so I have 6 health, and the assumption is that I get taxed 4 plus 3 is 7. So I'm going to lose 2 resources if he has Scolding or Bolt in Arsenal. Which means if I knock for like a drill shot, I die to both of those. So I think my correct answer is blind Azalea here. The alternative, obviously, is hope he doesn't have Bolt or Scolding in Arsenal. And I don't know. It's a really tough decision point. Actually, really quick, what was the card on top that I opted? Thinking about it a long time. No, E-Strike. Because I'm curious when I go to search. Oop. So weird going backwards 10 but forwards 30. It would have been a fatigue shot as the next card. So the blind Azalea did actually win here. But again, like I don't have a great way of knowing that. But I do go for this line, and this beats no Bolt, no Scolding. Yeah, it loses to Bolt and Scolding or damage from hand. And I think like any damage from hand. So he ends up showing me that he had the Bolt, and we realized that he was supposed to if he bolted, I would have to AB the 1, and then I couldn't pay through the Frostbite, and I couldn't attack, and I would just lose from that stage. So I did end up losing this game, but overall the matchup didn't feel that bad. I think against a good Iyslander, it's a pretty close matchup. It, like all of these games outside of the one where I got blown out, just came down to the last couple hands. Like, do the hands line up perfectly? Yeah, I think outside of the one blowout loss, like all of these were very, very close games where it was like, I hope he doesn't draw the damage card to Striders. And he was just not able to draw it. Yeah, and I guess I do see that it would have been the fatigue shot there. So yeah, that's what I got. This is a bit of a long one. Thanks to everyone who stuck around. Hopefully you learned something about the matchup here. Like I said, I think that this matchup is better than people think. It's not great. It often comes down to like how the Channel League Frigid line up, but it's very doable. If you just make sure that you're doing whatever you can to threaten and play through disruption instead of trying to block out and just be aggressive, you'll often find that Iyslander struggles to deal with the amount of like raw damage that we're able to present. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.